Okay, so imagine your world is in a total freefall. The institutions you've always trusted, they're crumbling. There's this new technology that's just sowing chaos everywhere, and the entire geopolitical map is being, well, violently redrawn. That wasn't science fiction, that was the 15th century. And right in the middle of this storm was one man, Nicholas of Cusa, a philosopher, a diplomat, a cardinal, who was just desperately trying to find some kind of unity in an age of absolute crisis.
And that brings up a question that is just timeless, right? How do you find unity when your world seems to be falling apart at the seams? The challenges Cusa was up against, political polarization, information overload, don't they sound a little familiar? His search for harmony in a fractured world, it isn't just some old story. It's really like a mirror for our own time. To really get a sense of the chaos, just think about the pillars of his world. The Catholic Church, which was the very center of life in Europe, was split wide open by something called the Great Schism. You had rival popes vying for power. Then, in 1453, the unthinkable happens. Constantinople, the 1,000-year-old capital of Eastern Christianity, falls to the Ottoman Empire. And, as if that wasn't enough, there's this disruptive new tech, the printing press, that's about to unleash ideas and dissent at a speed no one had ever seen before. This was the world Nicholas of Cusa had to make sense of.
So, who was this guy right at the epicenter of the storm? Well, Nicholas of Cusa, born back in 1401, was a true polymath. This guy was a doctor of canon law, a philosopher, and a theologian. And his day job as a papal diplomat and a cardinal put him right in the middle of the arena. He wasn't just commenting from the sidelines. He was tasked with actually finding solutions to his century's biggest problems.
His work really began with the crisis that was closest to home, the one that was tearing the church itself apart.
The whole debate really boiled down to one huge question: who has the final say? On one side, you had conciliarism, which argued that a big church council held the ultimate authority, even over the pope. On the other side was papalism, which said, no way, the pope's power is absolute. One papal bull even declared that submitting to the pope was absolutely necessary for salvation. This was not some academic squabble. This was a battle for the soul of the church.
And at first, Cusa was crystal clear on where he stood. Early in his career, he was a huge supporter of the councils. In 1433, he actually wrote a tract with this incredibly blunt title, arguing that, the collective wisdom of a council was way better than the singular power of one pope.
But here's the thing about Cusa. He wasn't afraid to change his mind. Less than 10 years later, his position had completely flipped. After seeing all the endless infighting and the political gridlock of the councils, he came to a really difficult conclusion. These councils had actually become a source of more division, not unity. For him, a strong central papal authority was the only practical way to bring order and concord back to a broken church.
So while the church was wrestling with all its internal drama, an existential threat was gathering on the horizon, one that was about to shake the very foundations of the Christian world.
You just can't overstate what a shock the fall of Constantinople was. It sent a shockwave across all of Christendom. It was a geopolitical earthquake. This city, which had been a Christian stronghold for a millennium, was now the capital of the expanding Ottoman Empire. For a lot of people in Europe, it honestly felt like the end of the world.
And the scale of this thing was just staggering. The city was defended by only a few thousand soldiers. They were up against an Ottoman army of 80,000. The force was just completely overwhelming.
So while a lot of people were screaming for crusades and holy war, Cusa's response was, it was totally different. It was radical and intellectual. In his work on the Peace of Faith, which he wrote just months after the city fell, he came up with this idea, una religio in variete ritum. It means one religion in a variety of rites. He argued that underneath all the different rituals and traditions of Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, there was a common single faith that could actually unite them. In an age of holy war, this was an absolutely astonishing call for interfaith dialogue.
All these huge external crises really forced Cusa to look inward, to what might be the ultimate crisis. How can our finite little human minds even begin to understand an infinite God?
His answer was something called negative theology. The basic idea is that our human language, it's just completely inadequate to describe an infinite God. So we can't really say what God is, we can only ever say what God is not. Cusa called this profound admission of our own limits learned ignorance.
And this led Cusa to a pretty radical conclusion. Any positive statement we try to make about God is, by definition, false. The divine is just fundamentally beyond our words and our concepts. For him, real wisdom started by humbly accepting just how little we can actually know.
So if words and logic don't work, how do you even approach God? Well, Cusa drew on these old mystical traditions and saw a kind of path, a journey in 3 stages. First, the way of purification, to cleanse the soul. Then, the way of illumination, to open up the mind. And finally, the way of union, a direct, intuitive experience of God that goes way beyond language.
Cusa had this wonderful, kind of quirky analogy for this journey. He compared the soul to a specially weighted bowling ball. You can roll it straight, but its internal imbalance will always make it veer off, never following a perfectly straight line. For Cusa, that's what the soul's journey to God was like. Not a straight line of logical steps, but a winding, mysterious, and deeply personal path toward the infinite.
So what's the big takeaway here? What does all this add up to? You can really see Cusa's entire life and all of his work as one long search for concord, for a deeper unity hidden just beneath the surface of a collapsing world.
And his legacy is just immense when you think about it. He was a pioneer of interfaith dialogue, centuries ahead of his time. He was a passionate advocate for reforming the church, even as his own ideas on how to do it changed. He was truly a bridge figure, with one foot in the medieval world and the other stepping right into the Renaissance. And, so importantly, he wanted to preserve the knowledge of the past for the future.
And this wasn't just an abstract idea for him. He made it real. He made it physical. Back in his birthplace, Kues, he set up a hospital for the elderly that also housed his massive personal library. He gathered over 300 precious manuscripts from the 9th to the 15th centuries, creating this incredible repository of knowledge to survive the storms of his age. It's a real physical testament to his belief in the power of ideas.
Cusa's lifelong project was what he called a concordance of opposites, a way to find harmony without just erasing all the differences. In religion, in politics, in philosophy, he was always looking for that deeper unity. And as we navigate our own turbulent, divided times, his search feels more relevant than ever. What can we learn from a 15th century thinker who, when faced with a collapsing world, dared to imagine it whole again?